Yeah. Okay. Good.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank you for coming tonight and to the second community workshop on the design of a park at Waite Drive. My name is Matt Bowen. I am the current chairperson of the Salem Mesas Community Services Commission. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, both in person and online tonight. Tonight, we're going to go over a couple of concept plans that we've put together. We have a consultant team led by Glenn Schmidt Design Group, and his team are here. They're going to walk you through the plans. The plans are based on the community feedback we received at the first public workshop and online. I want to thank Sue Richardson with the Community Services Department for putting this together and hosting us tonight. And so we thank you for your participation tonight. Look forward to getting your input tonight on the plans. It's exciting times. It's not often we get to design a brand new park for a city. And so community involvement is key to that, and excited to have you here tonight. So with that, I'm going to introduce Glenn Schmidt, landscape architect with Schmidt Design Group. Glenn, great. All yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And hello, everyone, and welcome. Sue, about how many people are on Zoom, do you think?
I have 9 right
So,
now.
so a few of you on Zoom, you'll be able to ask questions, and Sue will be able to alert me of your question, and then we could call on you. Folks in the audience, what I'm hoping, and all of you, if we could get through a presentation, kind of go through the whole design and ideas and themes and vision behind the design, and then we can have lots of opportunity for discussion, if that's okay. So I'm gonna do that, and
just some housekeeping things if you need to use the restroom.
the restroom is in building 500.
500 right across from us.
The doors open?
The doors are open.
Okay, great, thank you.
Zoom people don't use
Yeah, the people online. So here's the agenda we put together. So we did introductions. We're gonna do a little overview of the park site. We're gonna talk about our process and the timing of it and the next steps. We did a pretty elaborate survey that I hope all of you participate in. We're gonna present the findings of that survey. And then we're going to go over 2 different concepts and in great detail. And then we'll talk about planting, security lighting. We have a rough order of magnitude construction cost estimate at this point. It's going to be very rough, but we're going to give you a general idea of the cost, and then opportunity for questions and discussion. And here with me is Julian. We got Julian, who's our project manager. Steve and Alex are on our staff, and they've been working really hard. Really appreciate the effort that they put in to get to create the graphics and everything that you're going to see tonight. Folks on Zoom, I believe you can either raise your hand or you can enter something in the chat.
Q&A.
I believe in Q&A. Yeah. So we met back in March and had opened up our survey in mid-March all the way through April 11th. We're here today to talk about alternatives. And then once we get your feedback today, also on Saturday, this Saturday, we're going to be on the site with our alternatives to chat with folks some more. So we're going to gather all that input, and then we're going to try and come up with a preferred plan. So the plans that we're going to show you tonight, it's like a menu of ideas, and it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. So if you like an idea on one plan and you want to think we should put that on the other plan, that's what we're here to talk about, to create a preferred plan. So here's our site. I think all of you are very familiar with it. It's a little under 3 acres at Murray Hill and Waite Drive. There's some wood material on the site, which is kind of interesting. We might use that for some features in the park, for example. We've got a few existing trees that we're interested in keeping as well. And so let's get into the survey. So the survey had a number of questions, and here's the demographics of the people that responded to the survey. We actually had almost 300 people respond. That could include people that have come back and entered new and visited a second or third time. Actually, it could. But for the majority of what we could tell is most people came and just provide their input once. 300 or 295, 187 people are in the 91941 area code, 78 in 942. They had 30 respondents in other areas kind of around San Diego. But majority of the people are close by that responded. The people, most of them used the park, parks in La Mesa, at least once a week. So that's a good sign with the local folks that will take advantage of park. Majority of people are within a 15-minute walk that responded to the survey. Also, a little bit more than half the people have children under 18 in their household as well. Just some kind of demographic information. We also asked you all about what you would name the park. You had a choice to name the park. So we had lots of different responses to that. And I believe from there, Matt, you probably, your commission would probably review that. Eventually it goes to city council, I would imagine, for the name.
That's correct.
Naming the park. So that's sort of a separate process that we're going to provide this for you all to give you a start. And then we're going to do our park design. So we're not going to decide the park name in our process. That'll be a separate process. But have a good start on the various names for the park. Then we get into, I think one of the more interesting questions is that describe your vision for the character of the park in a word or phrase. And pretty significant number, 117 people said native and natural. The next level down was full of activity. Next level down, 38, was peaceful and quiet. Next was inclusive and multicultural. And then it was a smaller with other formal, contemporary, inspired by local history. So really those top 3 or 4 were really kind of our inspiration for our park design. You know, kind of keep referencing back to that. Then we asked, what are the most important considerations for the park? And this is a word cloud. So it takes the number of votes or number of people that mentioned each of these words, and then puts them into this graphic where the larger words are the ones that had the most number of responses and on down. So playground, safety, shade, walking trails, dog park, dog run, gathering spaces, sorry, it's very small. So that was kind of a wide open question. Then we asked, provides additional thoughts and considerations. And I think this reflected our meeting. A lot of people are concerned about safety in the homeless nearby. And that came out pretty clear. So again, that's what we had in mind as we're thinking about how to address these things in the park. And we aren't able to change social issues like this as park designers, but there are things that we can do, some tools that we can use to minimize this impact or potential impact on the experience at the park. Then this gets into the actual amenities. What would you like to see on the park? And we had a pretty big list of amenities, and the green are the most number of people that said that that's a high priority. So the green is a high priority. The blue is medium priority. Mustard is low priority. Red is should not be on the park, and then gray is no opinion. So it might be hard to see. I don't know if the lettering is quite big enough, but I'll try and read through them. The people really want tree growth for shade. They really want walking and jogging. They want security, lighting, children's playground, group picnic structure. And then it falls off a little bit lights, public opportunity, fitness, barbecue, and bocce and other games. Also, very, very strong responses of public restroom. People are looking for a public restroom, gathering area, off-street parking, turf area for recreation, off-leash dog run, basketball, community garden, pickleball, tennis, and such. So you kind of get a feel for what people are interested in. Now, one of the tools that we have for making the park safer is to bring more activity to the park. And so as we go through our different schemes, the items that are underlined in red are the only ones that we don't have on one of the alternatives. So the alternatives cover most of what people were looking for. The one that I want to draw your attention to is the off-leash dog run. That was very balanced. There was people that really wanted it, people that really didn't want it, and actually it was almost like even 50-50. And we actually have that on both schemes. The reason that we have it on both schemes is experience, and I've been designing parks for about 40 years. Our experience is that dog parks bring people into the park pretty much throughout the day, all the way from the morning, all the way to the evening. They're social, they take ownership, and it creates eyes. It creates eyes in the park. So we actually have the dog park situated in a way that it kind of observes, it's elevated a little bit toward the back of the park, and it observes the park. So our idea is that people will be coming to the dog park all day long, and they'll take ownership. And if they see something inappropriate happening, they can take action, make calls and things. So that's on both schemes, just to give you a little spoiler alert there.
Can you hold on a second, please?
Yeah.
I'm having some issue. You're on their big screen and the graphics are on the small screens. And so I have to figure out how to flip that. Technology. Thank you, Tatiana, for alerting us of that.
Guess they don't want me on the big screen.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's supposed to be, sharing my host view. But I've got it on my phone too, and it's not switching back.
Should we point this more toward the screen?
No, it's not. Keep going, and I will keep working on it.
Okay. So hopefully I'm trying to explain it. If you can't see, I'm trying to go through it carefully. So we put together, based on all this, some guiding principles. The first is native, natural, and sustainable, providing visitors the opportunity to connect with nature. Number two, provide multi-generational and multicultural experiences in the park. Three, it's a safe and comfortable environment full of activities with eyes on the park. Promotes health and wellness with opportunities for exercise, play, and social connections. Provides opportunities for contemplative and quiet reflection, and is sensitive to the nearby neighbors and residences. So that's kind of our goal, global goal. So as we're designing, that's what we're thinking about, along with all this input we've received. So alternative one, here's the list of amenities on alternative one, which includes a bioretention basin, which is true. And I'll show you this on all the schemes, is that along the west property line where all our next door neighbors are, our plan is to create a buffer. So we're moving activity away from that property line. And we're planning to lower the grade a little bit. Right now, the grade kind of goes down to those properties. So we're planning to lower the grades, except for where that pepper tree is, but lower the grades and then come in and do our bioretention. By law, we have to take water that comes off of hardscape, concrete and such, and treat it into these basins. And they're basins that will have like low grasses in them. So they'll be pretty and interesting, but they're not something you're gonna really walk through. So we create those as an edge along with a grove of trees. So what we're doing is we're creating that setback and buffer. So both schemes along the west property line use that bioretention and landscape buffer. In this one, we have a turf area that's not big for like, major games and league play and such, but more of a place to throw a frisbee and such. Off-leash dog run that I mentioned, children's playground. We have half-court basketball here, restroom, tree grove, gathering area, outdoor fitness, walking, running paths, security, barbecue facilities, group shade, and parking. So let's get to the plan. This is the plan. And you'll see that you enter off of Waite Drive go into the parking lot. We're using that same curb cut, the existing curb cut that's there. And we're moving cars a little bit to the east in kind of a meander. And we have about 16 cars shown with 2 handicap spaces. So on the right there, you see the parking lot. And then that cradles a big central gathering area, kind of plaza / playground area. So you can see the multicolored surfacing. That's the playground. And then just above, just north of the parking lot is a restroom. And I'll show you what we had in mind for that. On the southwest side of the play area is our 2 half-court basketball courts, and then a fitness area. And I'll show you what each of these look like. Then we have a loop around this turf area there, that organic shape. And then in the upper portion of the site, kind of the north section of the site, is that off-leash dog run area. And that's elevated about 7 feet above the turf. And then all along the west side there is that bioretention buffer that I was mentioning to you.
Could you point
So-
that out again? I'm sorry, it's hard to see. I mean, I didn't
I'm gonna
see-
zoom in. I'm gonna zoom in on all these things. If that's, yeah, hold on, I think it'll be more clear when I zoom in. So this is a section looking north from Murray Hill Drive up here. Drops down, you see the red line? That's the section. So it drops down to the parking lot. Parking lot's pretty even with the playground area, and there's picnic structure there as well. And then you see we've actually sunken the turf area. North, looking north. Yeah, so you're standing here looking north. All right, and then I can use this, but people online aren't gonna see it, but and then we've actually kind of sunken the turf area a little bit. That kind of contains balls. It's really fun for kids to roll down a little slope as well. And that gives us that buffer. And then we have a walkway, that loop walkway is right here. And then you see we have this basin that goes down a little and then comes even. So we're pretty much start even with the homes to the west, even though right now they're about 3 foot higher. So we're pulling that grade down a little bit. And then this is another section. This is on the north side where that dog run is. And it's kind of nestled into the hill. As you know, we have a big slope up to Murray Hill. And that's there. And then that slopes down to our basin there. And so I'll go into kind of more detail. This is zooming in a little bit. So here's that landscape buffer on that west side. So we'll have like this kind of look with these rushes and grasses in the bottom of this channel area that helps to purify the runoff from our hardscape, our paving and such. And then like a grove of trees along here. And we're gonna make sure they don't have big shrubs that someone can hide behind or camp in. It's mostly low material with this grove of trees. And that then pulls the activity away. So the activity is gonna be pulled away from those residents. So that's that landscape buffer. This is the off-leash dog area. It's under 1/3 of an acre, is pretty small, but it's good enough to throw a ball and enjoy some socializing with your dog on that space. In this case, we are showing it as synthetic turf. There's synthetic turf dog runs around San Diego. This is the one in Little Italy. And then that turf area that we're mentioning is about 160 by 130. A football field is like 300 feet. So it's 300, yeah. So it's about half the size of a football field, roughly. And this is the example. And then this loop trail, we have a number of routes around the park that you could do for exercising, walking. I could imagine kids in little tricycles going around here. We had some roller skaters at our meetings, and they could roll around this space. And then our playground, we haven't designed it yet, but our idea is that it would be kind of more wood, kind of rustic. The idea of native and natural as the theme for our park. So we're thinking of something that has more character, a little more wood character to it. And we haven't designed those yet, but that's the idea. And then just adjacent to that playground is a nice big shelter for a group picnic activity. We have a restroom, and again, we haven't designed that yet, but the idea of this is to have two family style, unisex stalls, or whatever you call them. And then in between would be the outdoor sinks. One of the things about having homeless around is you don't want the sink inside where they can close the door and use that sink to bathe and things. So you have the sink outside and just the toilet is inside the door. This is the two basketball hoops back to back. This is an example of one that we designed up in Encinitas. And then this fitness area, there's a lot of really interesting equipment out there. This is kind of the low tech, simple variety, but there's all sorts of different outdoor fitness equipment that we'd have. So it's like a fitness hub in this location that's circled in red. And then we do have security lighting throughout and all the walkways. At our last meeting, there was a discussion about sustainability and could we have solar lights. The two lights on the left here are solar lights. And they're really, the technology is coming along. And we'll have to talk to the city a little bit about it. You have to use more of them because they don't give us quite the output of our inline lights, but a neat alternative that we will look into. So that is alternative 1. And now I'm gonna run to alternative 2, and then we'll open up for comments and questions. Alternative 2 has many of the same elements. It does not have the open turf area. And but it does have off-leash dog, has a bit more emphasis on the children's play with the idea of more natural play, maybe more exploratory play for children. And you'll see we utilize the slope on this one more. We have group shade. Here we have outdoor fitness stations kind of around the park. So many of the similar things without the turf area. So this is the scheme. And again, I will zoom in to various elements of this. One of the major things we did here is we have the entry coming off of the street in the same place, but we are sweeping to the west on this one. So we have the similar size parking lot, but it's stationed into the southwestern corner of the park. And that kind of opens us up to do something interesting at the corner and bring people in from the corner. And this one, we also had the opportunity to bring people in from the southwest corner coming up Waite Drive. So it's a little more pedestrian welcoming from the corners. Whereas in the previous plan, we're kind of funneling them toward the middle of the Waite Park street frontage. So that's kind of a nice opportunity. The other thing that I forgot to mention on the other scheme is we had a pathway up to Murray Hill Drive. Sorry, I forgot that. We actually tried to create a connection to Murray Hill Drive. You guys are supposed to tell me when I forget stuff. No, sorry, that's my fault. But anyway, I'll show that when we get into the comparison. But here we did not. You know, it's a pretty significant elevation change of 30 feet or more, and we can talk with the building department whether they allow us to put stairs in without a ramp. But by code, the ADA code, Americans with Disabilities Act, wherever we have able-bodied access, we're supposed to have a handicap access. So you'll see on that other scheme, we have a stairway, but we have a very long ramp. Here, we went ahead and just had access at the corner and not tried to get people in off of the upper portion of Murray Hill. But here we have, if you all have been to Briarcrest Park, it's one of our parks that we designed. We did a lot of these swales, little interesting bioretention swales. So those are kind of this network of little dry creeks that run through the park. It's also part of that buffer that we're telling you about. And here we have a number of decomposed granite, kind of primitive trails throughout, as well as our concrete pathways throughout. So I'm gonna zoom in on the various elements. Here's a section, this one, again, from Waite Drive, looking north, Waite Drive is on the right side, and you're looking north. In this case, we're taking the section right through the children's playground area. And you see what we've done is we're incorporating the slope into the playground. This idea that kids can kind of run up and down the slope. We have different activities on the slope. And then maybe there's like even like a neat rope bridge or something and a structure. So we see that's really a neat opportunity to create a really dynamic play environment here. And then we go into our different swales along the way. We have our same buffer. In this case, the section cut through where the restroom is, which is on the over toward the western edge of the parking lot. And then this is a section through that dog run. We have this dog run pretty much in the same location. In this case, it's a little bit bigger, but it's still only about 1/3 of an acre. So this shows that configuration. So again, here's our landscape buffer along the west side. Here we're doing a little bit more with the swales. You can see the photographs, the two photographs on the upper portion here on the right are two from Briarcrest Park, which you have these cobble creek beds, dry creek beds that are really kind of interesting and dynamic in themselves. And then down below that photograph is that idea of the lots of trees along the edge to create that buffer. Off-leash dog park, in this one, we showed it as decomposed granite. And this is an example of it's compacted, decomposed granite, like an earthen compaction kind of deal. And we've done that in a number of dog parks around San Diego. And then this is the idea of this tower and this rope bridge and this really dynamic, interesting playground. Again, we haven't really designed it, but this is what we have in mind as we get into more detail here. And then there's this idea of nature exploration play, which is, this is a little area out in Balboa Park, and you actually allow kids to move branches around or move things around and manipulate their environment and really kind of connect with nature. And we're hoping we can have that kind of experience in this park as well. So we've made the children's play area quite a bit bigger to accommodate this kind of activity. And you can see the brown area in this plan is the children's play area. It has a pathway running through it. We can divide that with the toddlers 2 to 5 on the left side and school age on the right side. You can see that kind of light blue area is the slope. And we would have that as the resilient rubber surfacing, the safety surfacing. And then our idea is that the main portion of the park would be the safety mulch. There's a type of mulch, it's engineered mulch, they call it, and it creates that cushion and safety surface, but kind of more rustic and keeping with our nature exploration theme. And then, so we do have the walkways around. We have a walkway up to the dog run, excuse me. And then those light gray areas are the concrete walkways. And then over here, you see this kind of tan colored pathways with little bridges. That's this idea of decomposed granite pathways with bridges across our little creek bed areas. We have stations for fitness around the park. Rather than just one big area of fitness, we have little stations around the park to bring activity throughout the park. And then we have a shade structure, a group picnic area in a similar way, a large plaza space. And here's where our restroom is, adjacent to the parking. And then we also have a little, instead of another structure, we have this idea of creating a dense grove of trees that would have a picnic space underneath that dense grove of trees. And then the other kind of neat idea here was this idea of a pollinator garden. So and native and natural, again, our theme is the idea of emphasizing plants that provide beneficial benefits to our ecosystem globally, and pollinators that hummingbirds like to enjoy, or winged birds and things. Those are the kind of things that we incorporate into this garden. So it's a little garden with little pathways and benches, like a little place to contemplate and be quiet adjacent to the big activities over there. Again, we have our lighting, security lighting throughout, potentially with the solar lights. And so that's scheme number 2.
Can you go back one? to
Yeah.
the plan?
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me back there? We had a question online about the fencing, and I know that you have it either here or in a future slide
Yeah,
around Murray Hill and then the
yeah,
kind of the whole site.
thank you. That's a very good question. Along the west property line here and turning along the, turning east, we're planning a wood fence, 6 to 7 foot tall. And that would screen any views into the adjacent neighbors. And what we'll need to do as we develop the plan more in detail is look at the sight lines. So if someone is standing up on that dog run area, can they look down into people's yards? If they can, we want to have that fence a little taller so they can't look into it. So the idea is to screen that area even more. So we've got a landscape buffer and then a solid fence on that west side and along the east, kind of the north property, moving east a little bit. Then we go to a 5-foot chain link fence all the way up to Murray Hill. We have a 5-foot fence surrounding the dog run area. And then along the front of Waite Drive, we have a little 42-inch side fence. And that's just to keep people from cutting through and cutting in, and to kind of control the access to our pedestrian access points. And then we have that same fence running up all along Murray Hill Drive. So there's fence all around it with different heights and different goals associated with it. Does that answer that question, Lucy?
I think that answered the first question. Then the second question, I'm going to piggyback on that, was if the park can be locked at night. And that is a policy question that we'll forward that recommendation on for that. Typically, most of our parks just have open from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. and they're open in the evenings. We don't have any mechanisms in place currently to have people go and lock the parks at dusk or at 10 o'clock, whichever time it closes, but we'll definitely forward that. If that's a feedback that we get from people, we can see if that's a new operating method that we don't
Certainly.
currently do with our parks.
If that's desired, with this scheme, we have that ability to accomplish that. Hoping everyone online can hear Sue. You sounded pretty good from here, so we'll see. Let us know if you couldn't hear what Sue just shared. So I'm almost done with the presentation. So just generally on all the schemes, kind of native and natural. So California natives along with Mediterranean plants that are adapted to our region. This pollinator pathway idea where you're bringing in beneficial insects, beneficial winged birds and such as part of the scheme throughout. Generally, this is, we call it rough order of magnitude, which means we really don't know yet, but we've taken a stab at it. That these roughly, they're in the mid 5 million to close to $6 million is kind of the range of this cost today. And that will need to be adjusted over a course of time when this park is built. And because there's escalation each year, but that's about what it would cost to build these today. And with that, concludes my presentation. And happy to talk about anything that I presented and get your feedback. And Julian was going to write down your comments. And
Also wanted to make sure that everyone has one of these cards that you present right now. We're going to collect these at the end of the night. So does anybody need one of these cards? Take some notes.
yeah, and the cards are, if you want to, you can take them with you too. If you think of something, there's an email address that you can send more comments to. And there's also the note that it links to a page on the website, on the city's website on Waite Park. You had a question? Thank you.
You spoke of a solid fence on one area. Big part. Oh, I can speak louder. You spoke of a solid. Well, they can. Okay.
Yeah.
You spoke of a solid fence on one end of the park, one edge of the park, and a solid fence is often an inventory invitation to artists who are underground. Is there some type of fencing that can be put up that may be less invitation?
The question was about solid fence and graffiti, potential for graffiti
I have one more question.
on a fence.
Then you gotta talk louder.
Okay,
I'll
Yeah.
take your question.
The other question, well, Is the entire park visible from all streets?
The other question is, is the entire park visible from all streets? Yes.
Okay.
There is some grade change at the,
That's what I was concerned
the
about.
corner here.
Right.
so there's a little bit of a slope right at the southeast corner there. So there's less visibility right there, but then it quickly opens up to views. And that's again, one of our tools is there's a process that we call crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED for short. And there's a number of different ways and that provides tools for us. And the biggest one is visibility, making sure that there are sight lines into the park and provide those eyes on the park. And that's again, part of the strategy with the dog run, get more eyes in the park and have visibility throughout. In terms of your graffiti question, that is ongoing issue. A lot of times the wood fence, depending on what we use, can be lightly sanded off and removed. We have some other types of materials we could think about, and we want to talk with the city about that, whether other types of vinyl fencing or other materials would be better. So that's part of ongoing process. It's a good thing for us to consider as we decide on the final materials for the fence.
Okay, can we go to one online?
Certainly.
So there's a question about speed bumps or traffic calming along Waite Drive. So as part of the park process, the consultant's not planning that, but we will work with engineering to do some amendments to that street for traffic calming, like making the lanes thinner. It's not an area that I don't believe, I'm not the engineering department, that we can put speed bumps because of the type of street it is, but we are definitely looking at traffic calming measures in and around that intersection there.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I'm curious about the dog run being such a large percentage of the park on both plans. And I appreciate the idea behind it, but I'm wondering about alternate ideas, especially when, if I recall on the first slide, that the idea of having an off-leash dog park was like almost close to being a need, and some people said it was absolutely don't do it. Now, I would tend to think that if you had a perimeter dog run that was like more of a place for people to run with their dogs around a circle, around the perimeter, that might police the area better than putting a giant space that doesn't, synthetics turf doesn't seem to me to belong in most modern parks, and especially a natural park. And then I wondered why not some other alternative eyes. You know, I love the pollinator garden, but why is it smaller than the dog run? You know? So,
Yeah,
you
just
know, pickleball is like the fastest growing sport in America. And if you had a pickleball court, there would be people there from dawn till late at night.
So
Yeah,
I'm gonna just reiterate a little bit about, so the people out there can hear, there was a comment about the size of the dog park. And then also about, she had a comment about the non-synthetic dog park. And then we did have some feedback in some of the surveys of no dog park, yes dog park, which happens in every park survey we've been doing lately. Robin, you said recommended to increase the pollinator garden.
Well, it was simply that, to me, that was one thing that didn't seem like it changed in either alternative. And it also seems to me to be like, in some ways, the most significant part of the park.
And then there was she noted that there was no pickleball in this particular park. That didn't come up, and the size of that pickleball, this is a neighborhood park, not a place that we want to draw people from other parts of town or other regions of town. And so that was purposely left off because of the small size of
And
the lot.
that may be true, but are there that many dogs? I mean, you know, and if there are, is that what we want either? I mean, I guess maybe I'm not thinking like a big dog owner, and I know people walk their dogs in my neighborhood, but it just, I don't know, just the scale that kind of scares me, where it seems to me that's the biggest thing that's in the park. You know,
Yeah, well,
well, yeah, and the idea of the pollinator garden and the children's natural park how about the natural stuff for the adults? You know, it's for dogs and for kids, but like, how about adults?
Well, this plan has a lot of trails and open space that is the idea of like a meandering walk through kind of more natural feeling areas. So this scheme, number 2, has more trails and walkways that you could walk your dog, you could walk all around and enjoy open space. And the pollinator garden is more of the specialty garden that we would have like labels and things, but that will be the theme throughout. So it's not just going to be that one area, but that's the idea throughout. So we're hoping that it'll be that kind of experience throughout the park. And we kind of have a little more opportunity in the scheme 2, because in scheme 1, we did include a pretty big area of turf. In terms of whether the dog run stays or not, that's what we're here to talk about. We're okay to take it out if that's what the community wishes. And again, the reason that it was very mixed, that people really wanted it or didn't want it. The thing that made us put it in both, or that inspired us to put it in both, was the idea that homeless and safety was such a big issue here. And pollinator gardens in general, passive use doesn't attract the kind of people, the numbers that will attract from pickleball, or specifically a dog run, which is a little more passive than a pickleball court. So we chose to go with the dog run to bring more people in. Some good examples, Waterfront Park downtown is another one of our projects. The county right now is actually in the process of replacing all the gardens with like a basketball court, pickleball court, and a little t-ball field, because they don't think there's enough people enjoying those gardens. And you know, from my perspective, passive experiences are also very important. But you know, we look at our parks. We did Savita Park in Mission Valley. We have a beautiful garden space in it. The people are concentrated in the splash pad and the playground, where there's a lot for them to do. So the passive areas are wonderful. We want to keep those. We're trying to balance those with active activities that are going to bring people in and bring eyes onto this space. Because the last thing we want is to have, you know, 1 or 2 people visit this a day, and that's a great opportunity for inappropriate behavior. So we're trying to make it an attraction. And in this one, sorry, one other thing is on the alternative 2, we were banking on that playground being a very special attractor. That people will go out of their way to go to that playground because it's so unique and so interesting. Whereas the playground on the first scheme is kind of more conventional. You would see a lot in neighborhood parks. So this one's really banking on getting people there, families and children. This one's banking on kind of a variety of experiences, including open turf that you could kick a ball around with your kids, and basketball. And so that's kind of the balance here, is activities to bring people to the park. But we're here to listen.
Shouldn't the restrooms be up near that dog run then? Because that's where the homeless are gonna congregate, is near the restrooms.
Well, the question was, should the restroom be farther away from the parking lot by the dog park? But our experience is you want it close by, where there's easy observation from the street. Police can come into the parking lot and be right there. And also maintenance staff really wants it close by so they can take care of it. So when a restroom is remote, that becomes problematic, has been our experience. So we're trying to make it in kind of closer to the hub of activity. And generally the children are going to need the restroom faster than the adults in the dog park, or dog run, from our experience.
Now, are you gonna have benches throughout?
Yeah, the question is, are benches throughout? Yes, we have benches.
Throughout the whole.
We have, and it's a little hard to see, but we do have benches shown throughout and all along the pathways and such. And we have a number of picnic tables in and around those plazas as well. Yeah.
So I
Yes.
had a question about the walking path. Why isn't there one around the back side of the dog run? I mean, it seems like that would be a great place to really extend the walking path. Was there a reason why you couldn't go around the perimeter of the dog park area?
Yeah, the question was why we didn't put a pathway looping around the dog park. or dog, I keep calling it dog park, it's really a dog run. Yeah, sorry. We could. It's, the elevation change is a little challenging, but we can get people up there. Generally, when people are walking around the dog park, it distracts the dog and they start barking, or it's not always a comfortable place for people to walk around. So we kind of isolated that activity so that people walking or jogging or enjoying the park were separated from the folks up at the dog park. We could dog run, sorry. we could do it. Yeah, well, dog park implies a very large space. This is very small. Most dog parks are a minimum of 1 acre. And this is a third of it, less than a third of an acre. So that's why I'm trying to call it a dog run. It's smaller than most dog parks are. So we could, but not always comfortable to be around the dogs. Not everyone likes that. So, but
Dogs have to walk back out.
Yeah.
They gotta walk back, they gotta walk back out.
yeah, and they'll be on, they'll be on leash then. But yeah, we could look at adding that if you're interested in that.
Or all dogs on leashes and just let people go to the park with their dogs on a leash and make sure that's.
Yeah. But any other thoughts or questions or comments over here? You all have some comments or questions?
Question for Susan, Sue first, and then for you. I mean, it's great that we have gotten close to 300 input, people providing input. But in terms of, and since, I don't know the master park plan for the city well enough, or if we have any data on, or assessments on what are the needs of the city and that part of the city or that region, including Lemongrove, specifically in terms of playground space. I pretty much know what the availability of dog runs are, but active, passive recreation, and particularly in terms of physical fitness and natural areas. So we know where Briar Crest Park is, but in terms of resources within half mile, 1 mile, and then how that plays into what we need at this particular site.
So the question was about this area and our park master plan and the park deficiencies in this area or the overlap of other parks. In the 2012 park master plan, was right at the same time that this property was being purchased from the county, and it was identified as a future park site when the land was purchased. The purchase process began in 2012. With that master plan, this entire corner of the city doesn't have a park within a 15-minute walk, which is our goal to provide parks. The closest park is at Vista La Mesa, and it's on the other side of Massachusetts. So, and then Highwood Park, which is also more than about a mile away, near La Mesa Arts Academy here, is down the street. So if you look at, when you do a park master plan, you look at all the park assets and recreation facilities and you draw a circle around them, and it's, what the coverage is for the neighbors that you're serving to be able to walk to a park, like a neighborhood park. And there is no park anywhere at least a half a mile from this neighborhood. Does that answer your question?
Sure. And then when I guess you open up the ability for us to take things from alternative A to
Certainly.
B, and my thoughts are, like the DG versus artificial turf for a variety of reasons, as well as the natural areas. But the walkway, which I understand you have to have steps and a ADA slope compliant walkway, it seems like that would be good for a variety of reasons. I mean, some people may think it's not good to have another entry and exit point in the park, but other reasons may be very good in that you get a lot of traffic from that side of the park, and having access directly from there with a nice walkway that either you can take stairs or and would be great. And you could incorporate the last comment that Janet gave in terms of having walkways close to, if you change the shape of the dog run, you could accommodate that, as well as maybe reduce the size of the dog run as well. So just playing with that a little bit might give us what we're seeking and a mixture of both. The other concern I have is it's actually great. I like the idea to have a structure that is unique, tall, big, great attraction for teenagers.
Right.
But and make this park there'll be a attraction and identity piece for the park. So I think in that way they'd be very good. It's just if there's some ways to address some concerns that some people may have that it becomes an attraction, effective nuisance. There are some ways that maybe have some experience on how to address that issue.
So I'm going to try and summarize for the folks online. A thumbs up vote for decomposed granite instead of synthetic turf on the dog run area. And I see a few nods. Sounds like that's something that folks agree with. You also like the idea that we're connecting to Murray Hill Drive up higher on there so that people coming down can get into the park faster. That can then maybe roll into this idea of having that pathway go around the dog park. I'm going to just call it dog park. and kind of incorporate that maybe as part of that ramping system. So that's great. There was a comment about the children's playground that might be an attractive nuisance for teenagers. Is that what I was hearing?
Thompson High School, I go there.
Yeah. So we certainly would keep that in mind. A lot of times when a park is really active and popular, it doesn't leave a lot of room for horseplay and kids to be kind of taking it over, because but it's certainly a possibility, and we'll give that some thought as we go through. There is equipment that actually is more geared toward teens and preteens as well. We might even consider. Did I capture your comments there?
Right, and
Did I
with
forget
your
anything?
experience, can you give us the relationship between use and public use being a distraction to abuse or more criminal type, what we might call a criminal type activity? I think you alluded to that when you talked about dog users coming to the park regularly as a hindrance to abuse of the park. So maybe you could elaborate that a bit more, how that works and places where it has worked. I'm familiar with that in school sites and other places as well, but you can maybe name off a few parks in which how well that works.
The question was about the activity versus criminal behavior and how that interacts in terms of the amenities that are selected and the park design. And again, we can't, as landscape architects, resolve the homeless issue. But the main thing that we're trying to do is create visibility and create eyes. So if we can get more people there that are legitimately using the park, that tends to detract inappropriate behavior. Not always, but if you've got a lot of activity, then it's a safer place. Some interesting examples are downtown. Downtown's where you have the biggest issue with homeless in parks, from my experience. Children's Park downtown was designed without many amenities. It was a very artful kind of park. It had these mounds that you could actually get lost in and you could kind of hide in. It had the fountain, the civic fountain, but there really wasn't much to do, and there wasn't much to attract people. So it ended up attracting unfavorable behavior, and it got worse and worse and worse, especially as the vegetation grew in and it got even more private inside that space. So we actually redesigned that park. It's under construction right now. And what we did strategically is we added a children's playground to bring in really interesting, interesting playground that's going to attract people. We have a restroom. The restroom will have actually a monitor, someone that will actually click in the people and monitor who's using it, along with a vendor building we're hoping to sell wine and beer. Not sure we're going to get there, but certainly to have like coffee and other refreshments there, so that people can go and stay for a period of time. We have a fitness area, we have a pathway. We actually brought people out into the civic fountain to create that as an interesting attraction. And then we actually added a little turf area. So it's a lot of the things that we're proposing here, we're using as tools downtown. Now we'll see how it works. We're hoping that that's going to make a big difference. Waterfront Park is another example that is downtown. Now it's probably not a good example because they have security there, but it's so active there that it's not really a place that homeless have an opportunity to get a foothold or criminal behavior necessarily, because there's so many people there. So any other examples you guys?
Generally, criminal activity likes escape routes. And
Yeah.
they want a park area so they can get out of there quickly. Feel safe.
Right. The comment was that criminal activity likes escape routes. They also like darker areas that are not lit well, and they like places that they can be out of sight.
Dark areas, way up there, but they're way far away. You can't, those people have never been there. And I would, I mean, I go in there because I have to meet to get there, but most people have never been there.
Highway Park?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of our way to address this is those sight lines, the septed idea where you can look all the way through into the park. And then you have lighting, you have security lines so that if someone's back in the back corner of the park, you'll see them. So, criminals don't like to be seen. They like to be in dark places where people can't see them. And they like to be where people, not a lot of people are around. So that's kind of our strategy. It's not perfect, but we're hoping that it can make a huge difference. Yeah.
So you had mentioned that natural wood area in Balboa Park.
Mhm.
And I've been there before, and I'm kind of nervous about letting the kids just play because I feel like it's an accident waiting to happen. I don't know if Balboa Park or if they've said anything, but I kind of worry about liability issues for the city if you have that much just freedom of logs and whatnot.
Yeah, the question was the kind of natural exploratory play where kids can be jumping on logs and moving branches and things, worried about liability. And that's really going to be a decision that the city makes and whether they feel comfortable with it. It's kind of something that's growing around the nation, to be honest. And we have little editorial here. We've sanitized so many of our parks in a way that if you design a park that no child could get hurt in the least bit, it would be the most boring park possible, right? So we're trying to create challenges within the realm of safety and within the ASTM standards, all these things, all these regulations that we have. But we do want to challenge kids, and if they get hurt badly, that's bad. If they get a splinter, that's a lesson. So you have comments, Susan and Matt?
Just one quick, we have feedback from online that said they prefer one entrance on Waite Drive for safety purposes to follow up on the multiple entrance.
Oh, I see.
for
So the
illegal
pedestrian.
behavior. Yeah,
Pedestrian.
so this recommendation was more entrances, be more ways for criminals to exit if they're being pursued. One entrance near Waite was preferred.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Glenn, just following up on the concept of the nature-based play, the natural playground areas, as you said, it is something that's becoming more popular around the nation with a desire goal of getting kids back out in nature in the natural environment. And while this is an urban area, it provides at least somewhat of an experience. And even with climbing logs and structures built out of logs or boulder posts, you still have the ability to use wood chips and surfacing around those elements that if a child does fall, they still have an impact absorbing surface there. And so they're not necessarily falling on a hard surface. So there's abilities to work within your design to incorporate some safety measures that reduces those risks for injuries and reduces the liability as well.
Thank you, Matt. And just to add to that, many of you might know Richard Louv, who lives here in San Diego. He wrote the book Last Child in the Woods. And it's about connection to nature and how people, he calls it that we're suffering from nature deficit disorder. And he's actually has all sorts of research and some great studies around the world about how important it is for children and for adults to be in connection with nature. One of the studies I really liked by Roger Ut from University of Texas said that he actually had two sets of patients recovering from gallbladder surgery. One set was looking into a plaza that had nothing in it, a blank wall. The other was looking into a landscape courtyard. And I have a little charger there.
Because
I have a little charger down there.
my battery's dying.
Right there. See the little white
Okay.
thing? That's a charger. So the patients that were looking into landscape courtyard, they recovered faster. They were discharged from the hospital faster. They needed less pain medication. There was less complaints about the staff. And it was amazing. He's actually been able to measure reduction of blood pressure to exposure to nature. So that's a big part of it. And the benefits for children, this right here.
Oh, this by
doesn't
itself.
need to be plugged in.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, technical.
that'll charge you up.
I noticed the video went off and then because my phone's dying. We are very low tech outdoorsy people.
So hopefully that'll help.
As a discussion on trees, I
Yeah.
assume you're gonna use evergreen rather than deciduous trees, that would be perfect. And are they climbing type trees?
Question was about trees, whether they're going to use evergreen or deciduous and whether they can be climbed. We usually use a mixture of evergreen and deciduous. And, because, well, for a number of different reasons, but one has to do with the fact that we can celebrate seasons here in San Diego, but there are different benefits to different types of trees, right? And but the coastal live oak in San Diego is host to all sorts of larvae and really interesting ways in which it benefits our biosystem, regional biosystem throughout San Diego. But there's like sycamores and other plants, the redbud that has a beautiful bloom, but then, so the character of the park changing is kind of a neat thing, we think. So we use both deciduous and evergreen. And can they be climbed? Usually not, but possibly.
Many
Anyway.
Yeah, there's some folks that haven't asked questions. Do either of you have questions or in the back there? Yes.
Yes, my name is Carol Lockwood, and I served 18 years on the Community Services Commission in the development of many of the park amenities that we have here in the Mesa. And what I would say about this in general is there is no there. There's no wow factor. It's got all the amenities, it's got all the local, whatever you need for a park. But it's an opportunity to do something that makes it unique and special to our area here. Whether that's engaging some outdoor public art or some educational activities like they have at the Conservation Garden in the El Cajon, the Phoenix Water District with different plants and how to raise them. It needs to have a personality, and I think that's lacking.
Okay, I appreciate that, and we'll work on that. I think what we need to do is elaborate on the native and natural, which is the kind of the bigger picture concept. But thanks for the challenge. We'll take that challenge. And if you didn't hear, the challenge is to make the park have a greater identity, a visual identity, to make it unique, to make it special, and to connect with the community and that sense of place. I think I kind of paraphrased that, but that sounded like what you were looking for. And that's what we'd like to do. And we will take your challenge and we will make that happen as best we can with our hybrid plan. So thank you. Thanks for that challenge. Anyone, sorry, I may ask the other folks who haven't spoken yet. Anyone else like to make comments or?
Yeah, just to reiterate, part of what we're doing here is to get your feedback and to work together. We have 2 plans here, of course, and the goal is to make one preferred plan at the end of this process together. And this feedback that we're hearing from everybody is very valuable. And we're looking for that wow factor that you're talking about and putting that character really into each part of the park. And that's what we showed with the survey actually, is we really wanted to hear everyone's voice. And straight from the survey is where we got the amenities list. And of course, we have a question about local artists. And that is one amenity that can be provided on both of these alternatives. It's just getting more and more detailed as we get into the process. So that's where we are right now. We're kind of like at a broad overlook and we're dialing in more and more and getting more detailed. And with that detail comes that character that you're talking about, comes that identity and connection to Mesa. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. So to
Okay,
summarize,
you summarize. Go
to
ahead.
summarize,
Then I have a comment.
Julianne said the wow factor is coming. That as we consolidate into one plan and we are able to step into greater and greater detail, that we'll come back with the idea to impress you with our wow factor and that sense of place. So we appreciate that. I do have a couple though items I want to question you about in terms of which direction we head. So
Can I
go ahead.
I'll give you feedback on Carol's comment that Tatiana thought that option 2 had some great wow factor with the playground, like that feature. And then Matt online, I see you have your hand up. If you can type in the Q&A, then I can read it and respond to it.
So one of the basic questions is, do we emphasize the more native natural kind of character without a turf grass area? So is the turf grass important for activities on this neighborhood park? That makes a big difference for us as we start to consolidate the plan. Any thoughts?
I don't know if you're gonna have water to water the turf, even if it's recycled water, we have other plants to recycle water, it's gonna go back in a reservoir. So I think that may be an issue. But one comment, for Carol, she's one of those creative people that will find something to do with that wall that Bob mentioned earlier. So I could see that whole wall be a giant mural that blends into your design of plants and everything else. Maybe not too colorful because it has to blend in, but that's the creativity that I think will work and could be another design feature down the road. Just for your information, you've seen some decorated utility boxes throughout La Mesa. That was Carol.
Great.
So I think, we have those skills and artists in La Mesa. I hope they can partake in this process and create some of that. And that giant structure, if it's, using certain natural light material or natural materials, that could be pretty good. So
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and paraphrase again. The first point was that with our water issues in San Diego, the turf grass tends to use more resources like that. So that sounds like a vote maybe against the turf grass. But it's also this comment and praising Carol for all her great work in the community and the idea that we can incorporate art. And we love working with artists. We've done that many, many, many times. And we love to collaborate with artists. We collaborated with James Hubble on Briarcrest Park, for example. And we've done that many times over the years. That's also a layer that we'd love to incorporate into this as we get into more detail. Is the public art and the artful side of it. It's something that we really push hard for.
You know, with Jack and Carol.
I just painted a poll for the people out there, should we plant grass or not?
Wow.
And
Wow.
there's your other answer.
Look at that.
Those comments that Jack and Carol brought out about art, I just have to recognize today, I ride a bike and I ride the San Diego River area and noticing the walls are all artistic, a lot of artistic. But those areas that aren't art have graffiti in them.
Mhm.
So the people aren't messing up somebody else's art.
Yeah, so the idea of using art to discourage graffiti and encourage good citizenship makes a lot of sense. And I love these kind of comments. That's the kind of thing we like to do. Any other, oh, look, we're gonna.
There you go. Well, that's for your online
No,
customers. Should we include
It
grass
says,
area? That was 55% no and 45% yes.
so leaning towards no. And,
That was just online, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Participants back there, but you guys
Yeah.
made some input on it.
Is that, you feel that you feel comfortable with us moving on with some variation of scheme 2 here?
As long as you come up, I'm just saying, my kid, these are my grandkids and they're, 3 and 5, but to put, those logs like this and then have them hit them on the head, that scared the heck out of me, I don't know if you've
Yeah.
got ideas that would eliminate that, but I love the idea of natural play.
But you also have to watch the kids, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was right there with them, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't let that.
There's another concern about the natural play and the hazards associated with that. And when we create something out of logs, we actually have to meet specific criteria. We can't have an area that has head entrapment potential. Where we have fall zones, we can't fall to another log over a certain distance. We have to keep them clear. We have to have 6-foot safety zone around them. So there's a lot of regulations that are associated with playground design that also apply when we are creating features out of natural materials, which we've done.
Now,
So-
when is this slated to start? Or is there any start date?
Question is when it's slated to start, and Sue can address that a bit.
And how long will it take? Yeah, how is it getting funded?
Yeah.
So we have funding currently for the master plan, which is what we're working on right now. It will probably take us about 6 more months. We're looking at by fall to complete the master plan. And then it goes to city council for approval and adoption. Then when it gets approved by the city council, then we keep looking for funding to do the design and construction of that. So like sections of Collier Park that is gonna break ground in just a couple months, that master plan was completed 8 to 10 years ago, that we finally got funding for hopefully the next large piece. And an update on that, we should be awarding that to a contractor in the next couple of weeks. So we're gonna start actual construction on Collier Park at the end of this summer. So it depends on the funding. If the state or, other agencies give out grants, we go for that first. We have some funds that we get for park development fees from new development. That pot of money grows very slowly and we're emptying the bank for Collier Park right now. So it's kind of like having to start all over with that. This area is not a CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant Fund area, because the average income in this neighborhood is higher than that threshold to get those funds. Collier Park is in an area that has gotten that funding, so we've been able to keep piling up that money to go towards that project. So when we get a master plan, it's unfunded until we can find the funding. Correct.
So, but you're not gonna use that still for construction stuff, yeah?
No, so this is the concept plan, and then the contract, when we hire a designer, they will use that as the guide that says, this is what the community said they wanted, and then they will build construction plans to back this up.
What I meant was the way it's been or the way it's been used the last 5-6 years is that staging area for any kind of street work. That's not, there's gonna be no more operations, right, in that lot?
Ideally not, because we hope that we can get funding and keep moving this process forward. We changed the locks on the site, so it's now a park and it has only the city park key on it, as opposed to all of those other agencies that were using it for laydown.
You're making it another brownfield. Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of comments from online. Yes to the open play area, no to grass being used to cover the open play area. Considering the current and future water scarcity and continued climate change, I'm not in favor of tax dollars being directed to support non-native vegetation. And I don't like the concept of a human-run area to complement the dog run. Oh, I'm sorry, back up. I do like the concept of a large human-run area to complement the dog run. Although I don't believe it should be composed of vegetation that requires water. So the general consensus here is low water and native water.
Sir,
Stephen, if I got, or Scott, if I got that wrong. type it again.
do we have a consensus about the dog park or run? No, Robin's not in favor of it. I didn't hear
I wasn't in
opinions.
favor of it, I just said that
Oh.
it seemed like they were kind of similar on both sides, that was all, and so it wasn't like there was a different configuration or, and so, no, I'm not against having a dog run, obviously people like dogs, it's in the same place, it's large, and it seemed to be in some ways the focus of the park, was the wow factor, and I'm like, is walking your dog or running your dog the prime reason for this park? And that's, you mentioned a water feature downtown, was there any thought of a water feature in this park? Whether it was even just more than just the riparian area, maybe for drainage, but actually either a hardscape type thing or a natural pond type where there would be visible water. And I love the fact you brought up Richard Luke, because I think that a lot of people may not be aware that kids don't get hurt outdoors in nature half as much as they do in man-made things. And so they're much more liable to get hurt in the bathtub or falling out of bed. And as an arborist, people ask me all the time if their tree's gonna fall on their kid. And the likelihood is so slim, it is unbelievable. And as far as Autumn Wonder, as you leave here tonight, go look down behind the El Compadre Mexican restaurant here in front of Helix High School. There is a tree growing there next to a dumpster in an alley with almost no water, no care. And it is gorgeous right now. And if that park was full of gorgeous trees that bloomed every month somewhere around that park, they don't have to be native because that one down there is not native, but it is full glory right now. And that's the type of thing that I think people do appreciate, even if they don't know what it is, that there was a sign on it a little bit. And that's the wow factor without having to do anything so crazy.
Want me to take a shot at that?
Yeah.
Okay, so globally, I'll try and paraphrase that. Your comment was that the dog park or run seems kind of big compared to the other amenities in the park. We included in the same place on both park alternatives. That was because that seemed like the best place to be back away from the main activity and also up higher where the observation can occur. A lot of great comments about trees and how beneficial trees are, and that they don't kill kids or hurt kids necessarily, right? And that's a big part of what makes our community rich and beautiful. And that's the kind of thing that can make this park very special, is lots of trees. Is that kind of?
Water component.
And the water also, and the fact that we don't pour a lot of water on.
Argue that even lawn, if it's properly irrigated by subsurface irrigation and the proper kind of turf, is totally doable today. If we have the technology to do it better than what people do on their front lawns, and maybe people come to this park who don't want to pay for the front lawn. That's why they want to go to the park.
Mhm.
So I think you can justify that, even though my preference is to have a much larger pollinator space. Maybe the whole park is a pollinator space. And then the dog park is incidental. And but I love the idea of integrating a playful and creative park for kids, and I would definitely include the Helix High School kids. Make that walking path like Jack Shu recommended, so that people can come in. I know during the meeting online, it was mentioned that a lot of high school students walk down that street. And so if they could come into the park, that's good for them. And it's good for the park. As you said, more activity, that's a good thing. And the more kids that are there and the more young people and adults, then the more that the park has eyes.
Yeah, I think you're kind of repeating some of the things that we've talked about that we've agreed to. And your comment was that, you know, that if, and I to a certain extent agree that the highest and greatest use of our resources are on public park, not on a backyard of a commercial building or down medians or something, but places where people can actually use it. So if we've got usable turf, in my mind, that's easier to justify than turf on the backside of a commercial building or something. But also though, this would be part of that uniqueness of the park. I mean, most parks, this is a pretty conventional park in the way it's configured. We have more freedom to do really interesting character building elements on the alternative number 2, in my mind. So if we're kind of leaning toward that, but with the access to Murray Hill, what about, I mean, so the only thing that we're missing that's not on this, it's not on number 2, that's on number 1, is the turf and the half-court basketball. So turf that sounds like people are not all that in love with. Half-court basketball brings people to the park. I would not recommend a full-court basketball. That's a very different type of users. That tends to attract a group of young men that, you know, fight and swear and things. So the half-court basketball is used mostly by families. So is what we found. So that's
What's that blue thing? That's not the half-court basketball on the second one.
this is part of the playground. That's the hill. So we're actually utilizing the hill, remember, and have that rope bridge come across. So on that hill, we are proposing the resilient rubber surfacing. That's what that blue is there. And then more on the bottom there, the main portion would be more of the mulch that Matt mentioned.
Where's the restrooms on number 2?
The restrooms are just above the parking lot. So right here. So this is the parking lot restrooms, the picnic activities, the main playground. We include half-court basketball. Wow, look at you.
I learned how to do both.
Man.
On the fly. Oh, it's untitled. I know.
Any feelings about that? Yes.
Oh, I have a comment about the dog run. Just the proximity of the dog run, especially on 2. That's really, my property is pretty much right there on the corner.
Right.
So that's pretty close to the fence, and it's also elevated. I know you mentioned about raising the fence there. And I guess there's a comment about maybe doing a walk around there. That would like make it right along my property line.
Well, you say you're property, that's not,
Of course, we're 50-50.
No, my property goes west, it wraps around that northwest corner. So it goes 80 feet, about 80 feet towards Murray Hill. And I'm also on the north. So you see that the northwest corner?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wraps around, it goes up to about the corner of that dog run. The like if you go along that property line.
I'll go help you.
part of the easement from the HOA.
North of that is.
I think
I
it's a
mean,
little
I'm sorry,
L.
east of
I
that
think
is-
the,
Yeah, my property's like an
Yeah,
L shape.
and I think the houses that go further back go adjacent to that.
Yeah,
HOA.
and it just kind of goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like.
What's the scale, what's the dimensions of that?
Yeah, my house is.
Okay, but that's a good note, because, okay, so one of the neighbors questioned the northwest corner of the lot. And that one of the dog parks is really close to the property line. And so as Glenn mentioned, in the presentation that we intentionally made that buffer between all of those houses, from the park to the neighbors, but we didn't realize that, so we can make adjustments to that.
Yeah, it does get close.
Yeah.
We were talking before the meeting, it does get a little close right there. Yeah, and it's actually an interesting point you make that by bringing people back behind that dog run area, you're allowing traffic to go back there. And then you've got like that back corner. If there's no one in the dog park area, that becomes kind of a remote pathway. That's a little bit out of the way and pretty far from the main zone here. So it's all a balance of activity and access.
I'm just curious on the numbers of dogs that would be there at once. Is that something that you calculated?
So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to think about the noise. You said this was a park so that people wanted quiet, and yet there was roller skating possibly on the paths on the left. And it sounds to me like people were sort of gravitating to the right, but if you have to get all those dogs into that park all the way to the end, getting the extra walkway would certainly help if people were coming in from the other side, from the east side of the park with their dogs. But that's why I'm curious, is it seems to me to be a big space. It's like a third of an acre is a lot more than people have in their homes most of the time. And so how many dogs at once and
places for dogs to run off leash is one of the most popular features in parks today. If we put it there, people will come. I guarantee it. I can't tell you how many, at what hours. And so, yeah, there could be dog barking. Yeah. That is-
I'm not gonna be okay with that.
Yeah.
My office is right.
so that's why I'm thinking, how many dogs? Is it 10? Is it 5? Is it 50? I have no idea.
I can't answer that.
Well, I mean, like,
We get
when-
all gonna be busier. In days.
well, is there, I mean, this sounded like something that you were aware of in other parks.
I can't tell you how many dogs are going to be there. I can tell you that it will be heavily used or at least well used. How's
Because
that?
people have asked how many of the people who requested.
What is,
Yeah.
can we just move on?
Okay.
Okay, I understand you're not in favor of this dog park. Does anyone else have a comment?
But I think there are existing dog parks in the city that you can look at and see how they're managed and what the noise level is. I don't think it's, and noise is a relative thing. Some people think that's too noisy. And this is next to a freeway. So there are other factors. Maybe we need some kind of white noise created. So, but in any case, that's.
I think the biggest point that I'm hearing is that we need to be more sensitive to the neighbors in relation to that configuration of that dog park.
And I
That's
think
what
that
I'm
people can make the combination for that. Before we get too far along, so this is a question for designers, parks and recreation people. When do parks create homelessness?
Do parks create homelessness? I don't believe they do.
Do parks create criminals?
I don't think parks create criminals either, no.
I just want to get that, this is my personal opinion. And since I like parks and recreation usually help society get better. So I hope we don't get too far along designing a park that is free of any kind of crime or noise or anything else. In the sense that this is an addition to the community and we should be that. Now, given that, of course, we can design it so it's more helpful and avoids criminal activity and is attractive to lots of people. But I hope we see that when we invest in getting into this park and potentially finding $6 million to put into it, that is going to help the community in a variety of ways, including reducing homelessness and helping kids grow up so they don't vandalize, helping kids get along together as well, and hopefully be that's why I see why I get excited about parks and investing in that money. Because ultimately, it reduces those things that we're fearful of.
Thank you. The comment was the benefits of our parks, that parks don't create homelessness, it doesn't create crime, but it provides people opportunities to recreate. It provides opportunities to improve their health and well-being. And that's really important for a vibrant community. And so our parks are a big part of our vibrant community. And so appreciate the vote of confidence for the benefits of parks.
Maybe
Thank
we'll
you.
get more police to be in that area then.
What's that?
Maybe that would help have more police officers in that area. We don't see them very often unless there's something going on.
Yeah, please don't come into the neighborhood that much.
No.
I see.
So there was can you go ahead and write that down, Julie, a recommendation for additional police patrols, and then we also, in our parks are now putting cameras in that go directly to, you walk into police dispatch and you can see Lamaseed Park on their screens. So we're planning on adding them to Collier Park, and so hopefully in future parks we can continue making sure there's cameras there so they're being monitored by police remotely. And then I did have one online comment in regards to turf, the human turf area, the play turf, that to make it artificial instead of grass. So that was one comment we got from somebody online.
So prefers
Yeah.
over grass.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Artificial turf instead of grass in the play area for people.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Other comments? Anything we haven't covered? And we're going to be out on the site on Saturday too. If you'd like to continue this conversation. 10 a.m., 10 to noon.
And there's no, we'll be out on the site on Saturday from 10 to noon. There's no time, no presentation. We'll just all be there and we'll have the, the pictures, and we'll kind of hike around and, actually get a feel for the site and look at the level of change between where we're talking about the proposal and we see the steep slope. So come on out and meet us out there on Saturday.
Yeah.
Was there any thought about cisterns on that slope collecting water from?
Questions about cisterns collecting water from Murray Drive? We
There's
haven't.
a lot of runoff that comes
Yeah.
from that hill.
We haven't thought about that. We can look into it. It's, the water is going to be in the curve, so we'd have to come through into the
Because
site.
There's a big, a lot of soil on
Yeah.
the slope that, again, it's all
We could
about
think about it. Yeah.
an investment in the future. And same with any need for electricity or anything, any solar panels, any water
Yeah.
collection being incorporated in like, the sustainable part of the park doesn't have to be seen, but I'm just wondering about if that's in the concept plan.
Yeah, the concept was about sustainability, specifically about water capture and reuse. Solar as well. I did mention we have solar lights that we're actually using them at SCSU Mission Valley, the whole park there. It's a really interesting technology. They really are starting to look nicer now. For a long time, they were really not very attractive, but they're integrating them nicely into the fixtures. So we have some nice choices for solar lights. Right? The water reuse, capture and reuse is a tricky one because we basically have like a 6 to 8 month drought in San Diego, right? We don't get rain for 6 to 8 months. So to water the park over an effective amount of time, you have to capture so much of it that it's hard to make it pencil for clients. It doesn't pencil, but if it's something that's important to the city, we certainly can do that. We've done that at the Scripps Sustainability Center, Scripps High School Sustainability Center. We've done it in other sites, but the number of gallons that you have to capture is pretty staggering. But we have that flat area of the dog park. You put it underneath there. You could so it is viable, especially when we are starting with some gravity. to help with that. So we can look into it and see if that's something that city would like to pursue, because it's certainly a possibility. But it's a big commitment, because you have to capture so much of it to make it very far into the summer.
Well, but what if it was in conjunction with something like San Diego State might be interested in helping with a project that would do it again, this wow factor, some science, some technology, all to the benefit of the city of La Mesa's Park. Yeah, thinking kind of not like design one, but out of the box, something toward what our.
Yeah,
50
the suggestion, Robin's gonna go check in with San Diego State
I
and
have.
get them to
Actually,
finance the
I invested
sustainability
in this
feature.
park area for 25 years. I was in touch with the county before the city bought this park.
Yeah.
I proposed things to the county when it was still a brownfield, so yes.
Yeah.
I have people who have been lined up for this parcel for over 25 years. Well, we're just forgetting a park,
Yeah.
right?
No, and if you have contacts and ways for us to accomplish more, we're all ears. So we appreciate that, appreciate your effort on that.
Okay, so here's the plan. We're gonna post the slides and a recording of the Zoom on the website. And that's on the City of La Mesa.us. And then if you just type in the search Waite Drive, then that the park master plan has its own page there. And so it has the history of the last workshop and the history of the site, being the brownfield. And so we'll also, my email is gonna be on there. And then you can send your feedback. In addition, after reviewing the slides again, you can send an email. We'll keep that open until the end of June, and then we'll provide all of that feedback back to Schmidt Design Group, and then kind of start working on a final concept plan. And then we'll probably come back one more time with, before we, what's the next step in the?
I think we're
presenting
gonna
to the public
start
part?
going to the commission and hearings, but that's currently the way we have it set up.
So then later in the summer, we'll have a draft plan with this, and we'll probably go to the Community Services Commission and
Yeah.
we'll present it there.
Which those are all noticed public meetings where we welcome people to come join us and provide input as well.
Great. So with that, if it's okay, if we close the meeting, we can hang out and chat if you'd like to talk with us individually as well. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks
you.
for coming, everybody.
Thank you.